Okay, so first of all, welcome to this session. Small disclaimer, I asked Adriaan to explicitly state that this will be a non-technical session. So even though we will be talking about Solid later on, we won't go into too many details on how to set up a Solid pod. So this is just going to be a general overview on how data protection and data sharing in the new web will look like, or I should actually say will probably look like, but it will become clear after this session. So first of all, we will need to have a look at how the current state of the World Wide Web is, how applications treat data, how they see their users. Afterwards, we will get familiar with the concept of pods, a small introduction to Solid as well, and I extrapolated the concept onto how it may affect future business applications. So the web now, some might know this guy. This is Tim Berners-Lee. He basically invented the World Wide Web at CERN in 1989. If you would like to know more about this guy, we all can browse Google and search Wikipedia. So if you're interested in this guy, definitely have a look. Because even at the age of, I think, 60, he is right now, maybe 65, he comes with new ideas that might change how we live on the internet. He's also the guy that came up with the concept for the new web a few years ago, because he didn't think about how privacy would look like or data treatment by companies would look like in 1989. Maybe for the Belgian colleagues, there's a rumor. Maybe I started the rumor right now, but there's a rumor that in the past he had been called Philip Muiters as well, as a Belgian minister. So he might seem familiar. First of all, let's think about how I am on the web. Not what I post on the web, but how it will end on the web. So not your actual behavior, but the marks left by your behavior, which means sharing photos on Facebook, Instagram, posting stuff on LinkedIn even, status updates like tweets or things like that. They define who we are, but also the data that is left behind also defines who we are. And even though it's just data, with smart machine learning stuff, companies like Facebook might even know us better than we think we are. So if you think about who I am on the web, not only think about what am I doing, but how are companies able to connect my data on other things that they might know. So Facebook is also the owner of Instagram. They have WhatsApp as well. They have Messenger. So they have several applications. And our behavior on those applications can be linked together to identify what kind of person I am. I think maybe 2 years ago, there was a study of the University of Ghent that was able to predict who somebody was going to elect for in the elections. And they had an accuracy of 75% only based on leaked data that was made available through some data leak. I think it was 2019 or that period. It might even be that the people who were doubting between two parties, that Facebook knew who they were going to vote for. So I think we all heard this once: everything on the internet stays there forever. So everything that you have been doing in the past that you've been sharing in the past is there forever because the data is stored on the internet itself. So at home, what do we have to store our data? We have USB drives, we have hard disks, solid state disks. Some people might even have some floppy disks lying around somewhere. I definitely know there's some at my place. So this is data that is at home. So who owns this data? I am, because I own the device. So I am the owner of the data. If we take a look at the data storage on the web, so Facebook collects data, Google does, Microsoft does, basically every website does collect data. They all have their boxes, but who is the owner of the data? If you think about that. So disclaimer, it's not you. You're not the owner of the data. And that's because you've checked all these boxes. I agree to the terms and conditions. Basically, if someone has the time to read them, almost every terms and conditions state that all information that you share on their platform or application is subject to possibly being used to make, and they call it to make our software better, which basically means run smart algorithms and see how we can exploit you more into sharing more and more information and connecting more and more information to other people's information so they can see who is using their software, but also, like Facebook does, targeted advertising. Not only Facebook, also Google. Basically, the big tech are all doing the same thing under the hood of, let's say, making their software better, but basically it's increasing their revenue by showing what you want to see and making you click what they want you to click on. So the data is stored on the internet for personal data, which means that you are not the owner of the data. I have an article with me. There is a court case between SAP and AB InBev. AB InBev is a Belgian brewery, international company now. And they were using SalesForce for indirect SAP access. This means that they were using a service or an application registration within SAP to access the data. At some point, SAP discovered this, that they were doing it, and they filed a claim that for every person that had a Salesforce license that were seeing SAP data, they had to buy an SAP license as well. So AB InBev was just using Salesforce to access the data and combine it with what they have stored in their Salesforce application. Why would they do it? Just because Salesforce does things that SAP can't. That's why. So they filed a claim of $600 million to make sure that AB InBev would buy the necessary licenses for all their users they had on Salesforce that were seeing SAP data. But if you think about it, SAP can be hosted internally. So think back about having a hard drive at home. SAP can also be installed within your office. So then the big question pops up, who is the owner of the data? Who owns the information that you have as an employer or as a company? Who owns the information that you have about a customer? In my opinion, I would think it's your information as a company, because you were the one gathering the information, entering the information, and you are storing it on your own servers. So basically, all things are there to say that it is your information. If you want to use the information, you should be able to use it free of charge because it's your information, you gathered it. So why do we need to pay for all these users to get access to the SAP data indirectly? You could say definitely because they are using SAP itself to be able to access SAP, you need a user account. So that makes sense because you pay for the logic provided by SAP, but just the raw data itself that a company has this person for as an account manager, that's basically information. So why would we need to pay for this? By the way, AB InBev lost the case. They had to pay, I think they settled outside of court, so I don't know or I couldn't find what they actually paid for it, but they lost the case, so they had to buy named users for everyone. Which to me doesn't make any sense because the information itself belongs to AB InBev. So this concept of who owns data basically was something that Tim Berners-Lee struggled with as well. So he came up with personal online data stores or pods. So the word itself means that personal, so it's my data. Online means that it is accessible by everyone that wants to read it and has the permission to read the data. Data, of course, itself and store, so it's a way of storing the data. Now, the main goal of the data pods is that you are the owner of the data, you define what others can see, and you can block access at any time. This will mean that the data is no longer accessible for others. Right here, we already have a big difference between the current state of the web, because once I stop sharing information with Facebook, let's say, all data that I've been sharing in the past still remains in the databases of Facebook. So they can, I think I have an account since 2009, 12 years of information they have about me is still there. The European Union came up with the GDPR law, which stated that one could ask companies what they know about me, what information they have, and they also have the opportunity to, as a citizen of Europe, we all have the opportunity to ask a company to delete all information they have about me. So the concept of that is fine, of course, but it remains law, and it's a law written, I think, together with the big tech, because if you have a look at the GDPR law, what does it mean? Basically, once you request to have the information that a company knows about you, the company initially already has 3 months time to just reply to your request. So let's say I request my data the 1st of September at Facebook. They only have to reply by the 1st of December. After that, I think it's another 6 months time they have to gather every information and send it to you. So this means, worst case, that from the start of the request up until the final moment that they really have to share the information they have about you, there's a period of 9 months. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little bit impatient. So I'm not going to wait 9 months. So you get a feel that it's used to prevent too many requests, to prevent this kind of things to happen. And only the people that really, really, really want to sit through the 9 months will be the ones that can get their data deleted. If we go back to the concept of the pods, I brought an application overview of how social media would look like. Basically, if Twitter would would be compliant with the concept, it would mean that somebody will ask Twitter, show me the tweets of people in Lier. You might notice right here in their homes, they have this box with lots of information. So at home, all these people have a data pod where the data is stored. So Twitter is not storing the tweets. Once you write the tweet, you store the tweet in your own data pod, and Twitter will come ask them at your house. Well, not physically, of course, but they will ask you to share your tweets. So once someone asks, I want to see all tweets in Lier, Twitter starts thinking, whose pods in Lier do I have access to? So all information that Twitter will have is the pods that they have access to. Nothing else. So they will start asking every pod in Lier, send me your latest tweets, please, because I have someone who would like to see them. All pods have configured what information will be shared of the tweet. So if you just want to share the tweet content itself, but no profile picture and no name, then only the tweet content itself will be shared. So all these pods will send the information to Twitter, and Twitter will be passing all information that he gathered for you and will display it in your browser. The most important thing here is that in this process, Twitter is not storing the tweets. So once somebody here blocks access to his pod, Twitter will no longer be able to access the tweets, but they will also have no historical information about what tweets there were for this person in the past. So that's the biggest difference with the current state of the web. So the data is stored at your home and not within the databases of Twitter. This means that you stay the owner. So you define who has access to your tweets, what information about the tweet that they can see. You can grant access to, or the concept says that you can grant access to certain people to show the profile picture to. So you are in full control of what is happening with your data. I do have a small technical remark about this concept though. If it's true that Twitter will be the man in the middle, let's call it, gathering all the information, then I'm wondering what the performance will look like, because basically you get a round trip through their APIs every time. So you get an extra hurdle to get access to the data. I think, or I hope, that they will be developing the applications in such a way that we can access the pods directly without having the necessity of a man in the middle digesting all the information. Tim Berners-Lee, he started a company, Inrupt, and they are one of the main investors of Solid. And Solid is describes the concept for most of the things, and you can get access to, or you can request a data pod from Solid itself. There's a list of applications that are compliant to this new concept. If you have a look at the applications list, it's quite short for the time being, which is also the main reason why I think it's too soon for us to start using it. We will need major companies to adapt their applications and their software to be compliant with this concept before I think we will be able to benefit from it. Because right now there are applications being developed or already published which are more lightweight and just more of a demo that it works than actual benefits for who we are. If you want to get started, there are two ways to get started. You can host it yourself, which requires a lot of technical skills. Also, one of the reasons why I don't see the pods being used very soon, because if I start thinking about my grandparents, I think I will have to provide a lot of support then. Maybe should start living there to help them, just to make sure that everything is set up as it should be, because it's running commands and installing. I think it's a Node.js server you have to install. So all your basic setup at home will definitely change. So now most people have a desktop computer, even laptops are becoming very common as well. But this will require a small server at home, I think. So to help those people that aren't technical skilled, there are pod providers online, which means that the pod is not at your home. Yeah, like you asked indeed, Adriaan, a basic Raspberry Pi will be helpful as well. It will depend on how much of data that you can store on a Raspberry Pi, but I think with an SD card of 256 gigabytes, you will get a long way already. The pod providers are online providers, basically websites where you can register and you will get an ID of your data pod they set up for you and that you can use to connect to the application. Main question I still have there, are you the owner of the data pod? Because it means that the data is not stored at your home, so you rely on the other party to really do what they tell you they do. These are the pod providers, and if you have a look at who is responsible for the hosting, you will definitely understand why I'm still hesitant on using a provided pod, because Amazon is in the list. And as we all know, Amazon isn't that keen on following the rules for employment, but also other stuff. So I registered my data pod that I tested with, I think on the Solid community, because it's based on Solid itself, which means that Tim Berners-Lee is behind it in some way, which I trust more than Jeff Bezos, who would like to go to space with the money that he earns. So definitely check out, if you would like to get started, check out this link to install a pod at your home if you're able to, and have a look at the list of applications. There are small health applications as well, I noticed in the list. So definitely try it out, and maybe in the future we can have another session when this is more mature, because I feel at the moment that it's not mature yet to be able to use it very often. But let's see what it will bring. So the main concept is having the data at your place and being able to share it and block access to it and handle permissions by yourself and preventing other companies of copying all the information and do smart things that might harm you. So how might this affect business applications that we as a company develop? First of all, a big movement that I'm already noticing is that companies, our clients, are optimizing the way they work. This comes through digitizations, like going from paper to just working digital. And so they are basically optimizing their internal processes to become more lean internally, which means that they go from an application that does it all, like ERP systems like SAP, which are very complex, where they contain a lot of functionality, which means that being able to use it becomes more complex as well. So I noticed that they start moving from these giant applications to smaller, optimized applications, which are way better at doing that specific task that it is being developed for than a big software application like SAP would be able to, because it can be really focused on the process of the company itself. So they start to optimizing their internal processes to become more lean. It's how they call it. And this means that they will be able to store all this information separately as well. So every small application will have its own storage. And if we think about the concept, all these small applications, they will probably be able to call the other applications if they need information from another application. A good example might be that this is a slide too far. An example might be that at some point, this application, which is a CRM application, manages the information about the customer, and another application is providing functionality to a factory, which will store information about orders, production orders. So the main application has information about the order placed by the client, and this application who has been developed to run the factory has information about production orders. This application doesn't know about the purchase order, and this application doesn't know about the production orders. So at some point, the client will ask us, when will my order be finished? He will have the purchase order ID. This application can ask the other application, when is production going to be finished? And then this application will return, okay, production will be finished December 1st. The information will be passed to the other application, which then can be shown here, even though that the application here stores the data. So this means that data will also be more segregated, and we kind of get something like microservices, small logic that is being optimized to be very well at specific tasks, have their own storage, and be able to share information very quickly. But that's internally. We can also have a way to look at this over companies. So within the supply chain, because we are not the only company, we don't work on our own. We have clients, we have suppliers who all have information about each other or what they would like to do. So in the example right here, there is a company, so company B, they need a product to do what they are supposed to do. So they call a service that is accessible in company A. This means that company B doesn't have to store any information about the products that company A has. They can request it real time from them, so they get the data as it is at this point. Some might remember, I don't think within the software world that it's a common thing, but let's say 15 years ago, when you were buying stuff from another company, in the first month of the year, there was this big guy coming to the office. He had a big book with him, and they were the products that the company had to offer for that year. And to be able to have the information spread around the company, all they had to do was type everything in the book into their own applications. So if they would like to order a product, they didn't have to go through the book, but they had the access to the data in the application. These guys won't have a job anymore because we can access the data on real-time basis, which means that we will be able to request the company which products they have available, what their price will be, and things like that. So we can notify even the company, like, I need product X. They will have their internal processes to determine when they can have the product available. They can start everything automatically, but they can on their turn notify us on another application that they have the product in stock, for example, and ask the application when it's best to deliver what we need. So this means that the applications will be able to talk independently and have an automated process set up. So that means that not only internally we will be able to optimize lots of things, but also in the supply chain itself, processes can be optimized because we still depend on each other, but we can ask each other immediately the information that we need. And all these applications, if they have been set up with the same concept as the new web concept, they will have the information at their hand or can request the information from other internal applications. So this means that data sharing can be done very easily. And once this kind of access is being blocked here, this arrow no longer has access to the data that he had access to, and also no longer has access to the historical data, because based on the concept, you are not allowed to store the information that you received. So this will be a big difference, I think, in how software applications will look like, because backend and frontend will be developed separately. And backend, the core of the application, will most likely also ship with an API that should be able to be accessible outside of the company. So like Otto Jan Ham would say a few years ago, if we are able to get this concept working and also get it working within the enterprise world, then it would bring us one step closer to the ideal world. So this is a brief introduction on what I think the web will look like hopefully will look like, based on what is already being done. Also the concept on the applications and the companies sharing information is also being done already. I think Duracell won a Factory of the Future prize with it 2 or 3 years ago with an implementation of this concept. So yeah, it's we might get somewhere, but we need the big ones to support the concept and make it work for us as a human being. Um, because I think the main benefit of the concept will first come to business applications and the way companies interact with each other. Any questions?
Maybe a small one.
Mm-hmm.
Is there also, because you said you need a server or something, but is it already developed to have a, like, say, a hardware implementation or something like that? Because I'm just thinking all your data will be in one place. That's okay, and it's in your home. But then again, if my house burns down, where is the data still backed up, or is that something you have to provide? Is it I'm just thinking hardware. You will also need some hardware. Is there some integration already?
So you mean that you just like a hard drive that you can just buy it in a shop and that it has a pre-installed data pod?
Yeah, something like that. But I
Yeah.
was thinking more like a Raspberry Pi project or something
Mhm.
like that that you just can buy with some extra features.
I haven't spent specific research into that concept, but I think based on the idea that it's definitely not impossible that somebody has already done that. Um, it's still early days for the data pods, so it might even not be there yet. But at the moment, myself, I'm unaware of being able to buy it already with it already being set up. Apart from the online providers, but that's not something that I would recommend based on what the concept should be like. Definitely, also, if your house burns down, you are the owner of the data, so you need to set it up locally at your home, which also means that you are responsible of backing up the device.
Uh, yeah, about having it locally on your home network. Uh, is that secure? Because I guess most people's local networks are much less secure than like an Amazon cloud server or something like that. Packet sniffing. I think Telenet even has this thing where it like automatically gives out some of your Wi-Fi as a hotspot for some other Telenet customers that walk by. I just
Mm-hmm.
wonder how safe it is because you're still going to be transmitting those packets over the air. Could they be intercepted easier if it's just at that average person's house?
I think well, it's definitely like you say, if someone is listening to the packets that are being sent, I think if the main concept is to have it at home, the data, that not having it encrypted and very well encrypted um, is a no go for them. So it definitely should be very safe to have it. Um, I tried setting it up locally, which meant that I had to set up a Node.js server. And there is a predefined software package that you can install on that server. And basically, the information right there is only accessible by um, applications following the concept, which have been approved by Solid, for example. And they need your ID of your solid pod to be able to access the data. Of course,
Oh,
if the protocol is not that secure, then it's hackable, I think. But that's mainly on a technical level. where I think personally that it's the responsibility of the ones that develop the software for the data pod. If they don't do that very well, I think the main concept is broken because you can't store it locally.
Yeah. And if you, is your data only accessible while your pod is connected to the internet? Say you live in an area that's got bad connection, and Twitter reaches out to get your data, but your Wi-Fi has just gone down. Like, is that an issue, or is
Yeah, definitely you will need to be online at all points to be able, at all time, to be able to share the information.
Yeah. Okay.
This actually sounds a lot like running your own. It's far from related anyway. Your own bank, which is a Bitcoin node. It sounds a lot the same. Also with the addresses that are can if you know the address, you can share data or share Bitcoin or with another user. And for that, I know there exist already some hardware solutions. So probably even the same hardware solution can be used to run a pod, because it's also I guess low CPU usage, only needs some storage, which is actually the same as the Bitcoin node. Interesting. I have to run, Glenn, but you can continue.
Yeah, enjoy the run. Okay, no more questions then? Then I would like to thank you all for your attention, and hopefully I made some things clearer. There will definitely be some questions like how is it security related for us technical guys, but I really wanted to keep it on a high level, non-technical way, just about the concept itself. So if you still have any questions, reach out to me, and then I can guide you to some sources, or if I don't have the answer yet, or maybe we can find it together. But yeah, definitely reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.